Morning. I'd like to bring this meeting to order. It is a meeting of the Appropriations K-12 Subcommittee. Before we get going, I'd like to recognize Chairman Perkle for a prayer.
Bow with me, if you will. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you so much for this day that you've given us, for the night's rest that you've had. That I pray that for each one here, thank you for the service to this great state. Give us great wisdom. Be with our families while we're away. Guard, guide, and protect our hearts, our witness, and this great state. In your name I pray, amen.
Thank you, Chairman Perkle. Members of the K-12 Subcommittee, I sure do appreciate you getting up at this early hour. We're going to go ahead and roll through the tracking sheet, if that's okay. I'll go ahead and point out some of the major changes. Any questions that you have, please go ahead and press your button. One thing you'll see consistently through this budget, and then also for those of you on other subcommittees and other budgets, is an adjustment around pay. We're going to go ahead and skip those because those are pretty much universal. So let me go ahead and start first and foremost with DECAL, Pre-Kindergarten Program 22.3.2. We wanted to go ahead and recognize that the pre-K teachers and the assistants were in fact getting the supplement, but that was being funded by COVID dollars, not by state dollars, but we felt it was important that we made that reflection. In 22.3.3, we wanted to reflect the fact that DECAL had a little bit of a drop in enrollment, but we were going to take that surplus and move it into their summer enrichment program, allowing us to address summer learning gains. We thought that that was important for each of the children who have been impacted, especially those impacted adversely by COVID. That's it for DECAL. I'd like to bring your attention into the DOE, Section 24. 24.1.4, this is to provide agriculture, education, equipment, and facilities. We went ahead and we moved forward from what was going to be an FY 2023. We moved it into the amended 22, and that's $4.2 million. Please turn your attention to 24.6.3 underneath curriculum development. This is a reflection of a slight delay in the rule coding program at the Georgia Cyber Center, so we wanted to make sure that that was placed into the budget. Moving on, if you could please go to 24.11, you will see that we went ahead and we reflected the fact that the RTF program manager position had a slight delay in start all the way until September, so we went ahead and we put that adjustment in. In 24.12.2, there was a reflection by the governor's budget regarding the nutrition workers, but we went ahead and we fully loaded that expense, and that's where you're seeing the delta, most of that coming from FICA. Going down into pupil transportation, 24.14.3, you will see there's an incentive program in terms of the purchase of alternative fuel vehicles, and that's for $5 million. That accounts for 625 buses at $8,000, and I want to make sure that the committee is aware that's both propane and electric. You'll see in 24.16 and 24.17 a series of different true-ups that we wanted to do, the largest one being around 5 mil share. And then you'll also see at 24.17.10, you'll see an adjustment regarding the custodians, and that's for a little over 7,800 custodians. If you could move your attention to technology career education, 24.22, you'll see in 24.22.4, we are purchasing heavy equipment and construction simulators for CTAE type pathways. We're excited about this, and we think this is going to bring a lot of value to our students. That is it in terms of major changes for the K-12 subcommittee tracking sheet. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, the chair will entertain a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor? All those opposed, please say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
All right, if I could have everybody's attention, we're going to try to stay on schedule and keep rolling. Thank everybody for being here this morning. This is the Appropriations Subcommittee of General Government, and we'll go ahead and do a run through here of our budget, and I'll go ahead and get started. If you'll see, committee members, starting on page 1, section 4, and again, you will see the pay increases or adjustments throughout our budget, as you'll see through many of the documents. So I'll be skipping over most of those. But starting out, there is definitely one in audits and accounts, and you'll see that adjustment there. On page 3, section 11, stating accounting offices, under attached agencies, transparency and campaign finance, you'll see a $72K increase there for increased workload that they've had over the past year, and we'll continue on, so we're making an adjustment there. Next over DOAS, just see a salary adjustments there. Banking and finance, there'll be no changes. Department of Driver Services, be on page 8, section 21, at 21.2.4. You'll see an increase of $300,000 to address a CDL testing pad for the Dalton Customer Service Center. Next on page 11, and if I'm going too fast, y'all stop me, but Office of Commissioner will be on page 11, section 29, at 29.4.2. You'll see a small reduction there of $968,743. This is related to some additional revenue that this agency collected. So you'll see we made an adjustment there. Department of Labor, on page 12, section 32, there are no changes. Department of Natural Resources on page 13, section 34, lines 34.7.3. You'll see an increase there of almost $6 million to construct a public safety complex. We've had a lot of growth over there, and we need more safety on the island. Also on section 34.7.4, you'll see another adjustment or increase of almost $15 million to address some repairs and maintenance to our state parks. As many of you know, they have been used a lot through the COVID years that we have been through, and so they've also had a lot of neglected repairs from not having money to make those needed repairs. So we're trying to get some of those up to where they need to be. Next, we've got state properties, page 15, section 36, line 36.2.2. You'll see $45 million that we've moved over from 23 to 22 to go ahead and get started on the migration of moving those agencies that are left over there in to Peachtree to Capitol Hill. That building is in pretty rough shape, and so we want to get everybody over here where they'll be more convenient and closer to everybody. Department of Revenue, there'll be no changes. Secretary of State, you'll see on line 43.1.1, that's just another salary increase. 43.2.2 under elections, you'll see 2.5 that we're going to be reimbursing the counties with reapportionment. Everyone will receive a new precinct card, so they'll all know where they're supposed to vote, and so we'll be helping them get those out to the counties and take that burden off of the counties. And on 43.2.3, it's just a language adjustment stating what they need to do with the remaining funds there. And at this time, I'll be glad to take any questions. Seeing no questions, I'll entertain a motion. Got a motion? Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. Got a budget.
We're going to call the Subcommittee on Higher Education to order. You should be receiving your tracking sheets. First of all, Chairman Watson, you said please stop if you go too fast. I'm not sure anybody can go faster than Chairman Jones as far as talking. But we're still going to try to do this faster than he did it. If you'll turn in your tracking sheets, again, I'll echo the first two chairmen's comments. You'll see the raises, common raises throughout the budget that are here. I will skip over those. We will just address the items, the changes that we have as a subcommittee since our last meeting. If you'll turn to 41.13.2, that's our first change. We have found savings in some unused dollars in regards to the partnership with Clark Atlanta University Prostate Research due to COVID and some leadership changes there. They were unable to utilize all of those dollars. We were pulling those back, and we will revisit that when they're ready to go again. Second change will be on 41.14.4, we're adding in $3 million, provide funds for major repair and renovations for our public libraries across the state. Next change, our addition, 41.18.13 and 14, those two items. We are adding in $5 million for the design of the research tower at Georgia State University. Next one, 41.18.14. We're also providing funds for the design phase 2 of the University of North Georgia expansion for $2 million. Next change. We'll go to 41.24.6. We've added in $193,400 and some odd dollars for a Class A FM radio tower in southeast Georgia where there is a gap in coverage. 41.24.7. This is a pilot program with the Public Telecommunications Commission regarding education, and it is a interactive gaming and instructional program in regards to some new computer standards. We're going to invest in that program, and that should help some of our younger children get back in line and up where they need to be from the COVID issue. Next change, 44.21. You'll see that we have some savings in the dual enrollment, $3,442,800 and something dollars. This was due to the last minute actual numbers that came in that were a little, showed a little less usage there. We have taken that back, and we still believe we have enough as far as cushion there in that program. 44.3.1, we have an add of $111,300. This is to reconcile to the actual number of engineering students in regards to Mercer, and that add again trues up the number to the actual number versus the projected. Next change, 44.15.1. You'll see we've got a $10 million add. These are putting funds into service cancelable loans to Georgians. Residents, and these are for degree programs in the areas of mental health and substance use professionals. We want to go ahead and get that in there, make this aware for our high school students and young or our potential college students that these programs are out there. And with that, there are no other changes to the technical college. Any comments from the committee? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. We have a motion to pass. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. All those like sign. And we do pass, and our subcommittee is, hold on, 21.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just, is it not true that on 44.14, our REACH scholarship program is 10 years old today, and this committee is invited across the street to the Sloppy to celebrate that celebration? Our former colleague Lynn Riley at Georgia Student Finance is doing a great job with that, and so just thank you, and everybody they have breakfast from 8 to 10 over there, so if anybody wants to come over and thank them for the work they do at REACH.
Thank you, Chairman Dickey, and again, a great program, REACH, and a very successful one at that. Thank you, committee, and the meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.
Will Lynn be there?
Good morning and welcome to the Appropriations Subcommittee of Transportation. And we were going to go over the changes that we are recommending in looking at the tracking sheet, if you will. The first change is to recognize transportation fees, which are the hotel, motel, highway impact fees into debt service. That's better reflects the legislative intent of HB 170. It's reflected on the tracking sheet if you look at 47.2.1 and 47.6.7. So by swapping these fees in the debt service, we free up motor fuels to fund the match requirement we have for the new federal infrastructure bill. It also allows, and some of the other subcommittee chairmen have mentioned some of the changes that we're not going through all the way through in the different operational parts of our budget. The $5,000 pay raise, which was included here, and also the vacancies, recruitment, and retention, which was reduced here. The next change recognizes an increase in short line rail. For those that are on the committee, remember in beginning 2017, we began to address the problems that we had with short line rail not being up to Class 2 standards. We've made a concerted effort over these last 5 years. This particular appropriation will takes care of a third of the remaining short line rail program. So that's found in 47.6.4. And lastly, we're looking at itemization, looking at the change for the rideshare fees authorized by HB 105 of $9.9 million. 41.6.5 provides $4 million for transit. 47.6.6 provides the $5.9 million for the Rural Transit Initiative. So that is the changes we had in our on the tracking sheet. Do have any questions from the committee? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion. If there are any. I got a move, and I got a second. All in favor, aye. Opposed? The bill passes. We are adjourned.
Good morning. Welcome to everyone. It's good to see so many of you here with your bright and shiny faces this morning, too. I bring to you the recommendations for the budget and the human resources component. If you would look at your tracking sheets, we will start with Section 15, Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. The first change is at 15.2.3 to increase the funds for Georgia Options by $400,000. Georgia Options supports people with developmental disabilities so that they can live in their homes and communities. The next is at 15.2.4 to reduce funds to reflect the delayed contract implementation, a savings of $850,000. The next is at 15.4.3. This will provide funds for the technology upgrades for the Georgia Crisis Access Line in preparation for the interfacing with the National 988 hotline, expected to be implemented July 16, 2022. Georgia is ahead of the curve on this measure because of our own line that we have implemented, as well as the app that exists today. The next change is at 15.6.3 to provide funds for the Matthew Reardon Center for Autism, an addition of $16,875 to restore 1/4 of the FY21 cut and help them finish this year well. The next is at 15.10.2 to provide funds for capital maintenance and repairs of $5 million. This was originally in the governor's FY23 recommendation in bonds, and because it will be much more financially responsible, we have the ability to move this forward and pay with existing funds. And that is behavioral health. The next change comes in Section 27, the Governor's Office of the Child Advocate. And this will be to provide funds for technology upgrades to help them with case management and investigations, an add of $75,912. And then the Department of Human Services, Section 28. So we begin at 28.1.2 to reduce state funds to reflect surplus temporary funding from 6.2 federal adoption supplement due to COVID. We'll have a savings there of a little over $2 million. 28.2.1 to reduce the funds to reflect delayed implementation, a savings of more than $2 million as well that has been unspent and which will help us to help them. Also, then if you will look at line 28.7.2 to increase the funds for the integrated eligibility system costs for implementation of the Patients First Act. This was originally allocated at about $4 million for technological implementation, and it was confirmed by DHS that only $2.72 million is needed for the implementation at this time. The next is at 28.7.3 to reduce funds to reflect the workforce efficiencies. This is based on vacancies that exist today. And the last in that section is 28.7.4 to utilize and address the needs of funds to address the needs of high-need youth. We will have the ability to adapt the measure a bit because 6.7 was allocated in the 22 budget originally to create a therapeutic foster care program to meet the behavioral needs of foster youth. This program has shifted to include all youth funded by Medicaid under DCH, because of that, the agency would like to retain some of these funds to serve some of our highest need foster youth. This, we hope, will help address some of the hoteling issues that are going on today. The next change comes at 28.9.2. The House added about $1.5 million to partially cover the local match to help the area agencies on aging. They have to absorb that match, and during this time when it is difficult to find funds, we would like to help them meet that match and continue to serve more and more people with meal supportive services and family caregiver support. The next changes are at 28.24.3. This will increase the funds for Georgia Radio Reading Service, which is certainly a strong effort and tool that our blind citizens use. It restores half of the 21 cut to their budget to help them cover the rest of this year. The next is at 28.24.4 to increase the funds for statewide independent living council. This will also restore 1/4 of their 21 cut to help them cover the rest of their year to provide services to those who are trying to live in their own homes healthy and strong. Our final section is at section 48, Veteran Services. There are 3 changes there that address vacancies for unfilled positions right now. They are at 48.1.3, .2.2, and .4.3. Each of these combined will add about $76,000. One other change is at 48.3.2. This corrects the caption. The passenger van bus will actually hold 15 rather than 12 passengers, so we will be able to serve more people by correcting that number as well. And that concludes this portion of the budget. If there are any questions, we have a motion to pass and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you. And that concludes this portion of our budget. Thank you.
We're a few minutes early, but I'm going to go ahead and get started anyway. And first, I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege. Many of you know Courtney George, who's been my analyst for the public safety law enforcement part of the budget. And Courtney's been pregnant for 9 months, and she went home on bed rest for about a month, but it didn't stop her. We interacted almost on a daily basis, emails and phone calls. She did her job. Last week, she finalized this budget and promptly went to the hospital and had an 8-pound baby boy. So I certainly... And Brian Groom, who handles the judicial part of the budget, stepped right up, did all the administrative tasks and everything that you can't do when you're home in bed. So I really appreciate Brian, too. As we get started here, we move to the Court of Appeals, and under 5.2, the Georgia Statewide Business Court. Item 5.2.2, provide fund for annual leave payout for term clerks. They've only been in business for a year, but they've had some employees that have left already, and the payment is about $9,040. That's the actual trued-up payment. 5.2.3, 5.2.4, and 5.5 were requests for pay raises for a staff attorney, a deputy clerk, and a judicial assistant. We said no to that based on the fact that everybody's getting a $5,000 a year pay raise. Moving over to page 2, Council of Accountability Court Judges provide funds for operations to reflect restoration of budget reductions. Courts were slowed down last year or not even working in many cases, and we took some of their money, and this restores $18,594 to the Accountability Court Judges. Moving on to page 4. Grants to counties for juvenile court judges under 7.2.1, provide funding for grants to counties for the Cobb Judicial Circuit. They got an extra judge last year, which entitles them to extra monies, so it's an amount of $12,500. Page 5. Under prosecuting attorneys, 8.3.6, restore funds for Solicitor General training. They weren't meeting last year and they weren't training, so they requested $60,000. This only covers the fourth quarter, so we were able to reduce it to 2 trainings, and they accepted $20,000. 8.3.7, increase funds for postal services for leave and retirement expenses. They asked for $88,530 when it was trued up as $83,697. Moving on to page 6, Superior Court judges, reduced funds for personal service based on actual start dates of new positions. These were for law clerks. They hired a lot of new law clerks, as they do routinely, and the start dates never coincide exactly with when the funding occurs, so we were able to recoup $654,176. Moving over to page 14. GBI. Under 30.1.2, reduced funds to reflect delayed start date for legal positions. They got 2 new legal positions last year. Once again, the dates weren't congruent with the higher date, so we recouped $20,502. 30.1.3, provide funds for the replacement of 33 vehicles. Now, this is in business administration. It shows up as 0 in the governor's recommendation. Actually, it was a mistake, and it was put down into 30.4.2 with 107 vehicles. So what we've done is we've moved those 33 vehicles back up to 30.1.3 and moved the appropriate money, $828,000, up with that. And then instead of 107 vehicles, they'll get 74 in field services for $4,472,000. 30.1.4, provide funds for headquarters facility security enhancements. This is part of the Speaker's law enforcement package. It's $1 million for design, increased video surveillance, safety glass, and barricades for security enhancements to the perimeter of GBI headquarters. Moving down to 30.3.3, reduce funds for forensic pathology fellowship program. The Senate added 2 new fellows last year in the forensic fellowship program. It's a national organization which requires accreditation. The accreditation group hasn't approved it, so we recouped that money in the amount of $241,529. 30.4.3, provide funds for 2 temporary positions was the recommendation, 2 full-time positions and associated costs to investigate elections complaints. I've never known of a part-time GBI agent, and they go to school for 16 weeks, so what we've done is we've made those 2 part-time positions full-time, so there'll be 4 full-time positions, and it increases it from $469,000 to $483,000, and the slight difference there is because they're going to start later instead of the funds were for January 1st, and they won't actually go into March the 1st. 30.5.3. Courts weren't in session last year. They weren't taking up any probation fines, so they lost about $7 million that goes into the Crime Victims Emergency Fund. So the governor's recommendation was $4,623,000. We've also redirected another $1,881,000 in existing unutilized funds in the GBI to put them up just under the $7 million that they typically get. Moving to page 16. 31.3.3, provide funds for capital repairs and maintenance, and under secure commitment, it's the YDCs, and $3,249,000. These were initially bonded, and they've been moved back to the budget, and they're being paid for with cash. You'll see this a couple times here in the immediate future. Under secure detention at the YDCs, 31.4.3, provide funds for capital maintenance and repairs. $6,751,000. That also was in the bond program, and we're going to pay for them in cash. Moving to page 21. Department of Public Safety. Under Departmental Administration, 39.3.3, provide funds for the statewide maintenance and construction of 3 new communications towers, $655,000. They were also in the bond program being moved to cash. 39.3.4, provide funds to complete construction of the new headquarters facility. That's a pretty significant amount of money in the bond process, but they're moving $4,800,000 from bonds to cash. 39.4.3, reduce funds to smaller class size for the 111th and 112th trooper schools. Each of the trooper schools slated for this year were slated for 100 people. The first school only had 70 candidates make it to the school, the second one 46. So we took that money back, $1,734,738. And what we did with some of it is we redirected it to $144,370 to give a 10% pay raise to those people in Troop C, which is Atlanta metro area, on the crime detail here, that they're working every weekend pretty much all night long. And 39.4.4, provide funds for maintenance, repairs, and renovations at field offices in Baldwin County, Tattnall County, and Morgan County, and other statewide locations. $2,100,000. There, it's being brought from bonds to cash. Moving to page 22, under Georgia Firefighter Standards and Training, 39.7.3, provide funds to replace 2 vehicles. Both the vehicles are inoperative. One needs a new transmission and it's old, and the other just won't run, for $50,000. 39.7.4, provide funds for an online database to maintain records. Last year we funded an online testing program for the firefighters. Now we find out that the current web provider is not capable of storing online data records, so it's going to cost us another $100,000 to store them. Under Public Safety Training Center, 39.9.4, provide funds for capital maintenance and repairs for the Public Safety Training Center in the amount of $2,125,000. This was in the bond package, and it's being brought back for cash. That concludes the budget for public safety. Do I have any questions from the committee members? Hearing none, do I hear a motion? Have a motion. Do we have a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, and we are adjourned.
Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and call the Health Subcommittee of Appropriations to order, and we'll begin going through our tracking sheet. There'll be several, as was mentioned by others, there are many of these items that are common throughout the budget, so we're not going to point those out. We'll just go ahead with just the differences. And in our budget, many of the things that we have are really just a real truing up of the numbers with some later information and that sort of thing, but we'll point those out as we go through there. The first item I'll bring to your attention, 17.7.2. This reflects the funds that there's an increase there, and this is due to the extension of the Public Health Emergency Act that was due to end in April, but it has been extended to June, and you're going to see this in 3 or 4 different places through here, so I'll point that out as we go by. 17.7.9, this is to provide funds for skilled nursing centers for an add-on payment to an additional $10 per patient. Most of us have heard of the additional expenses they've had with the COVID, with the testing and the PPE and that sort of thing, and this is to help with that. The next 17.7.10 is a language only. This is an effort to bring the cost reporting that they do up to a more current level to deal with the liability and property insurance and that sort of thing. And this would be done after we get CMS approval as well as the audit for the 2021 cost numbers. Under low income Medicaid, 17.8.2. There again, this is an increase in that number that's brought about by the extension of the public health emergency money that I had mentioned earlier. That's the Medicaid match money. Under 17.8.6, this is a reduction there, and it's transferred over to the Peach Care program, and that'll appear in just a minute as we move along. Under Peach Care, there again, 17.9.2. This is a truing up of the number of the money that came in from the extension of the public health emergency that I've been discussing with you. 17.9.3, there's the transfer of that $13 million from the 17.8.6 that I mentioned just a minute ago. Under state health benefit plan, 1710.1, you'll see an increase in that number there. This is to transfer one-time savings from the Medicaid ABD and provide funds to support increased medical and pharmacy expenses in state health benefit plan. 17.10.2, this is it's language there. This is where the state health benefit plan shall provide coverage for FDA-approved medication for the treatment of obesity. If you remember a few years ago, we did a pilot project with state health benefits to do bariatric surgery, and they feel like that has worked well and been very satisfactory, and this would be a good way to get into this and hopefully get a healthier person and really reduce the number of surgeries they would have to do. And in 17.12.1, this is under your Healthcare Workforce Board. This provides funds for residency slots to fully fund the actual number of slots. So that's an addition that really just trues up what we need to put in there to cover those slots that are really there. Under 17.13.1, there's a reduction there. This is to the Mercer School of Medicine grant. We had put money in there to get 2 medical examiner forensic pathologists that were funded in the 2022 budget, but they were unable to fill those positions at this time, so we're able to do a reduction there. Under 17.14.1, over at Morehouse, they're in the process of a new nursing program. I think we've all become aware of the need for additional nurses through the pandemic. That's $500,000 there to help them with the program that they've got up and going. They'll be offering a BS and an MS degree in nursing. And those are the changes that we'll have on we'll highlight there. Any questions from our committee? If no questions, the chair will entertain a motion. Have a motion to do pass. Have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It passes. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Jackson's here. First of all, I'd like to thank all my committee members for being here. Thank y'all so much. And I know everybody thinks they've got the best committee, but I know we do, and the best analysts too. So, thank y'all. We're going to start with Department of Ag, and I just want to tell you before time, you're going to see in this budget a lot of reduced funds because of actual starting dates, and we've all heard how hard it is to get people to come to work and the labor shortage we have. And so we've taken advantage of the money when people did not start to work when we funded them to start. And so, you know, there's a labor problem in all agencies. And let's start with agriculture. And if you get your tracking sheet out, with 13.2.3, in Department of Agriculture, we reduced funds based on the actual starting date, $177,878, and you'll see a list. It's a soil scientist, a hemp position, an attorney. It's just an investigator, and I'm just going to call that out, that, you know, that we've reduced the funds by that much if you look on your tracking sheet, and not call all the positions that weren't filled. The next thing on your tracking sheet is 13.3.3. This is to provide funds for planning, design, and equipment, and for roof and air conditioning control replacements for the Tifton office. And this was in the bonds, and we moved it to cash, $985,000. The next change is 13.6.2, to provide funds for infrastructure and repair and improvement at the Georgia Agricultural Exhibit Authority. And if you don't know what that is, that's the fairgrounds in Perry. And this really has been an economic boost to that area. And the roof, we couldn't figure out how long the roof has been there, but we know it's been there 30-something plus years, and the air conditions are going out. The next thing is 13.7.4, and soil and water. We reduced the funds for the actual starting date. We had funded position, but it wasn't filled till September 1, and the funding came down in July. The next change that we've made is Community Affairs, 16.14.3. We reduced funds based on the actual starting date of $73,447. The next changes we have is Department of Economic Development. We captured some savings from positions, but in Department of Economic Development and all these, but we left them open so they can hire somebody if they can find somebody that's qualified. Section 23.1.2, we reduced the funds based on savings for current vacancies with a projection starting date of February 1. We left the funds in there. If they had somebody hired by February 1, the funds will be there until the end of the fiscal year in case they do hire somebody. And that's true in every position in Department of Economic Development. 23.2.2, reduce funds on savings for current vacancies with a projected starting rate of February 1, $30,216. Down at Global Commerce, 23.5.2, we reduced funds based on the current vacancy with a projection starting date of February 1, 2022 $224,626. 23.5.3, we reduced funds based on the actual starting date of $98,535. If you go on to 23.6.2, we reduced funds based on the projected starting rate of February, $56,209. 23.9.2, we reduced funds based on the actual starting date of $46,547. 23.9.3, we provided funds for the World Congress Center Authority to complete their roofing replacement of $28,800,000. We had the cash to do that. We went on and funded it, and this should complete the roof at the World Congress Center. And I don't know if you know that we couldn't figure out how old the roof was, but maybe some of y'all might have been here when they built it, but we couldn't figure. And this is the last. This will finish up the roof at the World Congress Center. And Forestry. 26.1.2, we provided funds for maintenance and repair for our forestry offices all over the state, and these, I can give you a list where these, some of the needs, but we're letting the forester decide where they're most needed. So we put $1,035,000 in that, and so many of you in your district will see, if you visit your forestry department, you'll see the maintenance is very needed. 26.3.2, we provided funds for the replacement of firefighting equipment, and we appreciate the governor had put in $3,024,156,000, and we increased it a little bit since the governor made his budget with inflation and travel. We had to increase it some, and this is for 7 bulldozers, 3 tractors, and 8 trailers. And we had to add $100,000 plus to it. But everybody knows how expensive everything's going up. And we appreciate the governor taking care of all of our people. And forest fires are very, very prevalent now. It's hard to say that when it's rained for so many days, but believe me, a dry spell's coming. Public Service Commission. We provided funds for legal fees related to an ongoing lawsuit challenging the Public Service Commission's voting districts. And as you know, and I know, that Public Service Commission has absolutely nothing to do with their voting districts, but that's where they're being sued. And it's going to a bench trial, and we put in $220,450. 40.1.4, provide funds for implementing an e-filing system to improve efficiency by automating various tasks that were done manually, and we raised that a little bit, and we appreciate the governor had put in $375,000, but we had to put in a little bit more because of the inflation, and we added $4,000 to it. I think that do I have any questions from the committee? Any questions? Since I don't have any questions, would anyone like to entertain a motion? I have a motion to have a second. Well, we've got a motion and a second, so we do pass. All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed? I was gonna let it pass without y'all voting, wasn't I? Thank y'all, thank you.
Good morning. That was pretty puny. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right. That's somebody sounded like they still had sleep in their throat back there somewhere. Well, good to see everybody this morning. A couple quick things before we start. I'd like for us to go to the Lord in prayer, and I'm going to ask Representative Gilliard to give us a little bit of what he did from the speaker's podium the other day this morning and give our invocation this morning. Oop, hold on. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lord, we thank you today for allowing us to be here as we assemble to do your business for your people. Allow us to be great stewards over your resources. You said, give us this day our daily bread. And so, Lord, we just ask you to give us this day as we make the decisions to provide bread for all of your children all across the state of Georgia. We give you praises and honor and glory, for this is your day. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Representative. I tell you, this old stage Southern Baptist the other day, as you got to rolling, started almost to get ready to start jumping pews now. Take up the offering. Well, I want to start out by thanking each and every one of you as committee members, but especially our subcommittee chairs on the work that has been put into this amended budget. A lot of work, a lot of checking and double checking and going kind of like Santa Claus, going through and checking the list, making a list and checking it twice. And there's been a lot of that happen. And most of all to our House Budget and Research Office staff, Martha and Christine and all the folks over there. As we leave in the evenings and go back to our hotels, apartments, our homes, they stay for many hours after that, a lot of time putting in the changes or doing further research on stuff. So I want to thank them. At this time, I will turn the chairmanship over to our Secretary, Chairman Dubnik, and I'll go to the well to present the bill.
Chairman England, that bottle of water's not completely full. Is that a good sign for us this morning?
Maybe. Maybe.
Chairman England, the podium mic is hot. The floor is yours, and we anxiously await 88 pages of riveting presentation of the amended FY22 budget.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. And if you will, start with me on section 1.1, and we'll go through by every line to make sure that we have no questions.
But and remember, your microphone's yours, Mr. Chairman.
In all seriousness, again, thank you all for being here. And I want to point out a few things that are kind of common throughout the document. You'll see in a few places a few true-ups on the $5,000 supplement to our state employees. Again, as always, OPB has to kind of put all the numbers together and crunch all the numbers, and typically they have to lock down in order to get printing done sometime in December. So once that is done, there are always things that seem to come to light after that. So it's no one's fault, it's just a matter of the process. The other thing that I'll point out to you, and I'm not going to point out each one of them as we go through because y'all have talked about them in subcommittees, but also on our other funded state employees, those employees that are benefit eligible, that many of them do not even know what their payer source is. In discussions, we felt like that with them being other funded, whether it be federal funds or through fees and those kind of things, that we needed to go ahead and take care of those folks as well in the amended budget. We'll look at it somewhat differently as we go into the 23 because there's some wiggle room for many of these agencies to be able to do it at that point or as they renegotiate any grants that they've got going on. But we felt like that all of those individuals, or most all of those individuals that were other funded individuals but are also state employees, and that's the part that matters, they are state employees, that we would go ahead and cover them. There are a few instances where we don't because there is confirmed wiggle room that's possible within the agency to this date. So you'll see those changes common. Also, you'll see, and I'll make a few comments about this at this point, but I'll point them out individually as we go through. You will see where we have pulled some items forward from the 23 budget that were either proposed by the governor to be funded via bonds or via cash. As we did some things and opened up some headroom, we were able to pull some of those items forward to go ahead and move forward on many of those projects a little bit earlier than waiting to July 1st to kick some of those off. And so also to understand about those items, those are one-time expenditures. So we're not going in and saying we're going to do it now and have to come back in the 23 and continue on doing it on those items that we've pulled forward. These are things that are one-time expenditures, so we're going on and doing those now. So if you move to Section 2, Georgia House of Representatives, you'll see the change there. That'll be your first time you see the $5,000 increase for our full-time benefit-eligible employees. And so you'll see that language very similar throughout the document, so I just wanted to point it out there. Moving on to Section 3, joint offices, you'll see an add there of about $1.76 million, and that is Legislative Service Committee back in the fall heard a presentation from an IT specialist that had come in and explained many of the weaknesses that we have within our systems here at the Capitol. Gaps in coverage on Wi-Fi, many other things that slow technology down as we start moving further and further toward a paperless method of doing our business here. There's some upgrades of the skeleton, basically, that'll need to be done. So that's starting to move that forward. If you move on to Audits and Accounts, Section 4, you'll see some adjustments there. Again, remember that the Department of Audits and Accounts is part of the legislative branch, so those additions were not made, were put in by the governor as submitted by Audits and Accounts, and then we trued up anything that needed truing up as well. Court of Appeals, again, Judiciary is just like the legislative branch. They make their submissions. Then the governor has to enter those, OPB has to enter those just as they have submitted, and so then we are the ones as appropriators that come back and do any true-ups there. And you'll see those true-ups starting at 5.2.2. That one is actually a annual leave payout, but that's to meet the actual expenditures. But 5.2, 3, 4, and 5, they were asking for a pay increase, but with the $5,000 increase that we're doing for everyone there, that was not necessary. Moving on to Judicial Council, 6.1.3, you'll see a restoration of some of the cuts that we had to make during COVID on that particular line item there. Moving on over to Juvenile Court, Section 7, 7.2.1. Juvenile courts, as we'd added a judgeship to Cobb County last year, it does allow that court circuit to ask and receive some additional grant funding there at $12,500. Prosecuting attorneys, Section 8, you'll see several true-ups here that just deal with the actual start dates for the individuals, and you'll see the first one of those, 8.2.6. Some training funds that they're not going to be able to use all of between now and the end of the year, so we've left a quarter in there. And then some personal services for leave and retirement expenses at 8.3.7. And then some savings at 9.3.5 under Superior Courts as it relates to starting dates of those individuals. Supreme Court, just the adjustments on the payroll. Moving on to the State Accounting Office, if you'll look down at 11.5.2 under the Government Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission, otherwise known as Ethics, their case count has gone up significantly, as have their billings for the administrative law judges that they require to hold those hearings. So we're trying to get that trued up to what it needs to be there. Moving on over to Department of Administrative Services, Section 12. And Representative Evans had asked a question of Representative Gaines and the well on Tuesday, I believe it was, talking about the subsequent injury trust fund. And so I didn't have a chance at that point to clear up. But you'll see at 12.6.3, the $150 million put in for workers' comp claims. Those are state workers' comp claims. Those are individuals that have been our employees, that some of these cases have been open as far back as, I think it's 1982. And so this is trying to clear up about 700 of those claims that have been outstanding since that time. It is not part of the subsequent injury trust fund because the SITF is a function of private employers and their workers' comp liabilities there. So I just wanted to clear that up this morning. Again, didn't have that opportunity to on the floor the other day. Moving on to Section 13, Department of Ag. You'll see Chair Lady Houston and her committee have gone through and looked at start dates on many areas through, and the first one of those at 13.2.3. Then moving down to 13.3.3, an item that we brought forward from bonds dealing with roof and HVAC replacement at the Tifton office, which is where one of the bigger labs is that the Department of Ag has. 13.6.2, under the Ag Expo Authority, otherwise known as Georgia National Fairgrounds. You'll see an ad, a little over $4.63 million. That's to go in and replace some HVAC systems and do some other maintenance that is needed on some of the original buildings that are now right at 30 years old down there and still have the original equipment. Those HVAC systems and some of that other equipment are at end of life, and repair parts are not available any longer. So duct tape and baling wire have been keeping many of those running, so it'll give us the opportunity to update those facilities. 13.74, under Soil and Water, you'll see a true up for an actual start date. Banking and Finance, no changes. Behavioral Health, DBHDD, as we know it, it's easier to say DBHDD. Under 15.2.3, you'll see an increase of funds for Georgia Options. Georgia Options was kind of a partnership with the General Assembly. Several years ago, we had helped them over a period of 2 or 3 years to get stood up. They provide a lot of services out in the communities that are not available otherwise. And so with COVID, we have seen an impact not only on them but many others, but this is one that we're needing to help out and kind of get over this hump right here so they can remain open and continuing to serve their clients. You'll see at 15.2.4 just a reduction for delayed contract implementation. And then at 15.4.3, you'll see an ad there for the Georgia Crisis Access Line, the 988 hotline that will go live on July the 16th of this year. 15.6.3, under Child and Adolescent Developmental Disabilities, again, like Georgia Options I mentioned a few minutes ago, Matthew Reardon Center for Autism down in Savannah has been a partner of the state for many years. They do a lot of private fundraising, and a lot of that has been on hold, of course, because of COVID, but the Matthew Reardon Center, just like the Marcus Autism Center, provide a service that otherwise would not be being provided, and so we're trying to help them out as well through this time that we find ourselves in. 15.10.2, you'll see funds for capital maintenance and repairs. We just brought that forward from some cash that the governor recommended in the 23 budget to do it now. Under DCA, we'll roll down to 16.14.3. You'll see just a cleanup on actual start dates for some salaries there on grant administrators. Department of Community Health, rolling on over to 17.7.2. Again, as we get into this process, we're basically at this point 2 months later into the process than OPB was, and so there's always more information that comes along, as y'all have seen. And as we send it over to the Senate, there will be further information always that comes to light. And so by the time we finish up on the amended budget and go to conference, you'll see some other changes, I'm sure. And so what you're seeing there at 17.72 is part of that true up in the recognition of the extension of the public health emergency. 17.79, you'll see an add-on payment for our nursing homes. Nursing homes, just like our hospitals, have been hit during the last 2 years in a way that's been completely and totally unimaginable. Many of them are seeing their costs for servicing those patients or serving those patients go up dramatically with what it's costing to get temporary or travel nurses in. And while we have provided a lot of travel nurses, they have had to go beyond what we've been providing as a state to do that. And so it's caused quite a financial hardship for them. 17.710, just updating some language there as it relates to the professional liability and property insurance language that we had included in the original FY22 budget. Moving on down to 17.8.6, it and 17.9.3 are basically the same funds just being put where they're needed. You'll see a true up at 17.9.2. Then moving on down to 17.10.1, just another true up, or not another true up, excuse me. Dealing with state health benefit plan, just putting a few more dollars into reserve there as we continue to move forward. We're seeing and experiencing higher claims there as well. And then down at 17.10.2, a program that Chair Lady Dempsey and others have worked on for several years as it relates to obesity. And we've opened that program up. It started as a pilot, and now we have opened it up to all SHBP members, and just making sure that those FDA-approved medications are covered for those SHBP individuals. Moving on to 17.12.1. In 21, we had to take a pause as we hit COVID as it related to increasing the number of residency slots in the state of Georgia. Many of those residency slots were put into place without us helping like we normally do. So what we're doing here at 17.12.1 is picking up kind of where we left off and working to fund those residency slots. You'll see an adjustment at 17.13.1 as we had added last year in the 22, trying to help stand up some forensic services. Mercer had come on board as a partner on it, and we thought that it was a good plan that we would partner with them. Well, unfortunately, they've not been able to, and GBI has not been able to find those forensic pathologists. So we're just capturing that savings. We'll look at it again in 23 and make any adjustments necessary. 17.14.1, as it relates to Morehouse School of Medicine, they've got a nursing program that they're looking to stand up and expand, and we've talked to them, visited with them on that. So we're helping, as you all know, we've partnered with Morehouse on docs and nurses for rural and underserved areas, and so we're just continuing on with that partnership as well. Department of Community Supervision, you'll see no changes there. Department of Defense, no changes other than statewide. Moving on to Driver Services, Section 21. 21.2.4, we've just pulled forward a project to repave the commercial driver's license carousel at the Dalton Customer Service Facility. Moving on to decal at Section 22. At 22.3.2, just recognizing that decal has used some of their CRRSA funds to provide the supplements to their teachers, and just noting that, if for nothing else, for historical purposes in the document. And then at 22.3.3, just telling them to utilize some existing funds for the summer transition program that was started last year to help catch many of the kids up that have had learning loss. And so what we're doing there is just saying go ahead and use some of those existing funds to help fund that program. Moving on to Section 23, Economic Development. You'll see there at 23.12, 23.22, 23.52, and 23.53, just capturing the savings that are available from the delay on starting of those positions. That continues on at 23.62 and at 23.82 and 23.92. I tell you, Chair Lady Houston, when she latches on to something, she goes with it. So that's where we find those savings coming from. At 23.93, you know, the Georgia World Congress Center is an incredible facility, one of what I think is one of the premier facilities across this nation. I've been in many of those facilities, as have you all. The opportunity that World Congress Center has is unparalleled, especially in the Southeast. And so it is a state asset, and it's one of those things that we have a responsibility to continue to maintain. So a portion of that facility, the older portion of that facility, is in dire need of roof replacement. We have done it in bits and pieces over the years, but there's a remaining section we just need to go ahead and get done because it's starting to damage the metal under the roof. And the longer we delay on that, the worse off we're going to be. So we're moving forward a request they had for the 23 budget and doing it with cash here at $28,800,000 at 23.93. Moving on to the Department of Education. At 24.14, you'll see the ag equipment grant. We always do the ag equipment grants and the CTE grants, usually in bonds, but we have an opportunity to go ahead and fulfill those with cash this time. 24.63, you'll see a savings there because of the delayed implementation of the rural coding program. There have been some changes at the Cyber Center that was going to partner on this, and so they're just not able to get it up and running as quickly as we thought they would be able to. Under non-QBE formula grants at 24.11.2, again, a start date savings there. 24.12.2, we're going in and truing up that number as it relates to the school nutrition workers and making sure that the FICA costs are included there on their $1,000 supplement that we're providing. 24.14.3, Chairman Jones and his committee earlier had mentioned talking about alternative fuel buses, whether they be electric buses or propane buses, something that's kind of been a House initiative over the years on trying to get school systems to look at that going forward. Longevity of those vehicles is much longer than that of a traditional diesel or gasoline model, and it's also better healthy for the kids that are on those buses, so we're just encouraging more of that. 24.16.1 and 16.2 are both true-ups on the formula. And then if you'll look at 24.17.1, 17.2, 17.4, 5, 6, 7, you'll also again see formula true-ups as it relates to the QBE funding formula. We'll note that QBE is fully funded in this amended budget. We were still holding back a little bit last year because we were unsure of revenues. However, this amended budget and going into the 23 budget, QBE will be fully funded again there as we had started a few years ago. 24.17.10, going in and capturing and making sure that the custodial staffs at these schools also see the $1,000 supplement. And then down at 24.18.2, a contract with NAMI, an expansion of that contract a little bit for the mental health services that they're helping to provide through the RESAs. Moving down 24.22.4, Chairman Jones and several of his subcommittee, and he's allowed me to be a part of it as well, looking at some of those needed pathways that are out there for individuals and young people to have careers, good paying careers. And one of those things, and we've been hearing it a lot from our construction industry friends, especially those in heavy construction, dealing with bulldozers and excavators and those kind of things, about needing to find young people that are trained to operate those machines. And so in a partnership with several of the manufacturers, in partnership with the road contractors and others around the state, we're looking to stand up a program that will place simulators across the state in several schools that will have shared access for not only that particular school system, but the school systems adjoining, so that individuals can come and get their training when it's convenient for them. Kind of a key card system that they can get in, after hours to complete their training modules and that sort of thing in those simulators, that will then allow those individuals to go out and go directly to work for companies that were looking to grade roads or grade building sites and those kind of things. So I'm excited about that, and I think there's a lot of potential there. Section 25, Employee Retirement System, no changes. I've had some questions as it relates to ERS. There are some changes that the ERS board is proposing, and I think we will see a bill that has to codify a few of those changes, but it does put them in a better posture to be able to offer a COLA. I know we all hear we've got a lot of retired state employees that live in our districts. And so I'm excited about what the ERS board and their staff over there have been working on to move them forward to getting a COLA for their employees sooner, or for their retirees sooner than later, and quite possibly they might see it by the end of this year. Stay tuned on that one. Moving on, Section 26, State Forestry Commission. You'll see an ad there at 2612, just bringing forward some of the bonds and paying it in cash. 2632, again, as OPB had put together this equipment ad, we have seen the cost of equipment go up, like we're seeing the cost of equipment and everything go up right now. So we refreshed that bid, and so what you see there is the latest number on that bid for that equipment. Moving on over to Section 27, Office of the Governor, you'll see one small change at 2782 for the Office of Child Advocate for some technology upgrades of $75,912. Moving into the Department of Human Services, Section 28. Again, as some of the extensions happen on the public health state of emergency on the federal level, it does affect things also not only in DCH but also in human services. And so what you're seeing there on the first one at 2812 is the reflection of the temporary 6.2 increase on FMAP. At 2821, you'll see there where we put some money in, I think last year, to help stem learning loss in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so there was a little bit of a delay in the disbursement of those funds, so we were able to actually capture a little bit of the savings there. And then at 2872 on the eligibility system, on the Patients First Act, an updated amount there for what it's actually going to be. Then 2873, you'll see a slight reduction there based on vacancies within that agency. And then at 2874, again, we'd appropriated some money for dealing with high-need youth. And in the testimony from the commissioner, in talking with them, they were not going to need that full amount, but did ask to keep about $4.1 million. So we've taken 2.6 of the original 6.7 we'd put in, and those funds will continue to address the hoteling issue that I know they've been working on, many of you have been working on, and our colleagues in the Senate have been working on as well. 2892, increasing the funds for the required match on the supportive services, meals, and family caregiver support as it relates to the American Rescue Plan. So we added about $1.5 million there to help cover the local match that will be required of our AAAs as they do Meals on Wheels and several other the programs that they do across our state. Moving on down, 2824. At 2824.3, you'll see an ad there, a partial restoration of the 21 cuts for the radio reading service. And then 2824.4, another restoration of funds for the statewide Independent Living Council. Moving over to the Office of Insurance Commissioner, Section 29, 2942. You'll see a capture of some savings. They had increased the fees, so it allowed us to be able to pull back out some state funds where they're using that fee revenue to provide their services. Section 30 under GBI. If you'll look there, you'll find again scattered throughout some savings from delayed start dates, and so that's what you see there at 30.1.2. At 30.1.3, that also coincides down at 30.4.2 under Regional Investigative Services. The ad for the vehicles had all been put in there under RIS. We need to split those back up and put a portion of those up into Bureau Administration. So that's what that change is there. And then at 30.1.4, just the increased security at the headquarters office and as part of the Speaker's law enforcement package there, and just trying to go ahead and get in front of that a little bit. At 30.3.3, again, I mentioned the forensic pathologist a little bit ago and our trouble on hiring those. They've not been able to, so there's some savings there we can capture. We will again address that in the 23 budget going forward. At 30.4.3, on the investigative services dealing with elections, investigations, and complaints, just truing that up to pull in 4 full-time officers instead of 2 part-time and 2 full-time. Moving on over to 30.5.3 under CJCC, the Georgia Crime Victims Emergency Fund is seeing a shortfall because pardons and paroles and probation was not able to fully execute going out and collecting the fees. Those fees go into the Crime Victims Fund, and so we're needing to true up there. And you'll see in the languages where the change is, they were actually redirecting about $1.8 million, almost $1.9 million in funds of existing funds to put in there to help them out to get through the rest of this year to make sure those families are adequately compensated. Moving on to Juvenile Justice, you'll see 2 ads at 31.33 and 31.45, again bringing forward from the 23 budget to go ahead and do those repairs and maintenance to those facilities for the YDCs and RYDCs in the amended budget. Moving to the Department of Labor, no changes there. DNR, you'll see the statewide spreads, of course, through there. And then under state parks at 34.7, you'll see an ad there at 34.73 as it relates to Jekyll Island and their public safety facility. The fire department they have there was built, I think, in the late 50s, and with the size of the new equipment has become problematic to be able to shelter those vehicles, as well as State Patrol needs a headquarters there on the island itself. But it will also allow for several other functions to be included in that facility. So we've gone ahead and said let's do that here in this budget. And then at 34.74, we've seen a huge increase in the visitation of our state parks. During COVID, as people have gotten out and about, and that's kind of been the place for them to go have some safe social distancing. And so not only that, but also just kind of the deferred maintenance that we've had at our state parks over the years. We finally got a chance to kind of make a pretty sizable impact there and try to catch up a little bit. Moving on, Section 35, pardons and paroles, no changes. State Properties Commission at 36.2.2. In the 23 budget, the governor had proposed to go ahead and move forward with the plan to get our employees out of 2 Peachtree and get them centered back here on Capitol Hill. We've got quite a bit of office space that has opened up, not only at the Twin Towers, but over here behind us, behind the old judicial building back in there. And we did a floor plan study, if you remember, we put in last year that kind of started us or kick-started us down the road of how we would disperse all those individuals. So we're pulling forward that funding to do the phase out of 2 Peachtree, get our folks out of there. And if you're wondering why we're getting out of there, that was the gift that keeps on giving to the state many years ago. And we're to the point now that the cost to update that building to current standards far exceeds the value of that building. And so it's best to get our folks moved on out of it sooner than later. Public defenders, no changes. Section 38, public health, no changes there. Department of Public Safety, looking at 39.3.3, you'll see two items there at 3.3 and 3.4. One is the communications towers that are needed for them to complete their coverage of the state. And then at 3.4, some additional funds needed for the increasing cost of the new headquarters building that's under construction now. 39.4.3 is savings where two of the trooper schools, 111th, 112th trooper schools that we'd funded last year, we fund them at 100 individuals. One of those schools only had 70, and one of those only had 46 that completed, so we're able to capture some savings there. And at 39.4.4, you'll see us pulling forward from bonds $2.1 million for some maintenance and repairs and renovations at three locations around the state. 39.5.2, some of the savings that we captured on the trooper schools will go to implement the 10% salary supplement for Troop C, the officers that are doing the weekend crime suppression units across the city here in Atlanta, working with APD and other law enforcement agencies, just trying to get, it's a voluntary basis, and just trying to sweeten the pot a little bit to help get volunteers in for that work. 39.7.3, under Firefighter Standards and Training Council, you'll see there an add of $50,000 for 2 new vehicles. I think Chairman Hitchens, he might have said at one time, both those vehicles they have existing have given up the ghost, and so they're needing to be replaced. And at 39.7.4, just standing up a database for their online testing stuff that we put in place last year. 39.9.4 under Gypstick, you'll see there a cash item brought forward from the 23 budget for some of the repairs there at the Public Safety Training Center at Forsyth. Moving on to Section 40, the PSC, you'll see an add there at 40.1.3 for legal fees dealing with their lawsuit over the way they're elected in their districts across the state. That is going to trial very shortly, so they were needing some attorney's fees there. A true up at 40.1.4 based on actuals. Moving into Regents at Section 41. If you will look down to, you get to skip a few pages there, on down to 41.13.2, a true up of some of the numbers for actual expenditures on a partnership with the Georgia Hospitals and Clinics as it relates to Clark Atlanta University. Due to COVID, some of those things they'd planned on doing, they were not able to, so we're just actually going ahead and capturing that savings, and we'll look at it again in 23. Under public libraries at 41.14.4, pulling forward from the bond package next year, $3 million there in cash to do the major repairs and renovations, and that's many of your small, all of your small public libraries have different issues, whether it's leaky roofs, HVAC systems, ADA compliance, numerous issues that need to be addressed, and we started addressing that every year a few years ago, and so we're continuing on with that same program. Moving on over to 41.18.13, you'll see a little planning and design money there for 2 projects that we would normally bond, but we have the ability to go ahead and do with cash, and because of the need to go in and move these 2 projects a little bit faster forward, we're not having to wait till July 1 to actually start work on those. One of those is the research tower at Georgia State University, and the other one is a Phase 2 expansion of the University of North Georgia. Moving on to 41.24.6 under Georgia Public Broadcasting. They continued to make sure that they have our state covered for safety reasons during storms or natural disasters, and so they were able to get one of the new frequencies and have to stand up a tower down in the Kingsland, Georgia area So we're doing that there for $193,450. And then at 4124.7, GPB has done some amazing work as it relates to online learning. Several years ago, they went ahead and totally completed putting the Georgia history textbook online for teachers to use with interactive abilities on those, where they actually go and visit some historic sites. Well, they continued on this past year, realizing a lot of the learning loss that was going on, and within their contributors and other funds that they had raised, had completed a couple of other units that would help stem some of that learning loss. And this is just going on to help them develop some more of those programs to help address that learning loss for those students across the state. Department of Revenue, just one language change there at 4210.2 as it relates to the tax refunds that the governor has mentioned of the $1.6 billion that will go back out to the state's taxpayers as this year has, again, revenue has done things that we never dreamed that it would do. Moving on to Secretary of State, 43.2.2, every 10 years, as many of you know, or most of y'all know, the SOS is required to send out new precinct cards to every Georgian, every registered voting Georgian. And so every 10 years we go in and do a temporary ad to allow for that to happen. At 43.2.3, just recognizing that some of the existing bond funds they have would be used for a new voter registration system. And so we're just putting that in and asking us what their spending plan is for the rest of that remaining bond. Section 44 under student finance, dual enrollment, a true up of numbers there. Engineering scholarship, again, the true up of numbers there. At 44.15.1 under the service counselable loans, as we are addressing mental health and mental health issues in this state, part of what had come out of the commission and part of what we've heard that has come out of the Rural Development Council too is the drastic need for individuals that are trained practitioners and folks that can help people with mental issues. And so what we've done there is put $10 million in to address that service counselable loan program for those individuals engaged in going to school that will practice in the state of Georgia for a committed length of time to allow their loans to be service counseled. Feel like that is an incredibly good investment for the state, for our citizens, for all of us. That will be one of those things that it may take us 4 or 5 years to see the impact of it, but when we do, we will know it. Teacher retirement system, section 45, no changes. TCSG, section 46, no changes there other than statewide changes. Moving on to DOT, section 47. Chairman Perkle and Abby Day and the committee members there did an incredible job. As you know, most everything in DOT has some kind of formulaic function on how the funds are devised, how they're distributed, how they're moved around, and the things that can be done with them. And we knew from talking to DOT over the summer and into the fall that with the Federal Transportation Infrastructure Bill, that there would be a significant state match required on that for some of those projects. And so what you see, for the most part, in the changes they have made are freeing up those dollars to make that required match. If you look down at 47.6.3 and then 47.6.5 and 6.6, just taking that $9.8 million at 6.3 and dispersing it at 6.5 and 6.6, and that's those rideshare fees and making sure that we're in compliance with House Bill 170 and House Bill 105 as it relates to those issues. And again, you'll see some of that truing up also through the rest of the DOT. Moving on to Veteran Services. At 48.13, 48.22, and 48.43, you'll see just a capture of some savings from start times and other workforce efficiencies, and then a corrected caption at 48.32 as it relates to a transportation van there. State Board of Workers' Compensation, no changes. And that's a walkthrough of the document.
Well, Mr. Chairman, as always, we appreciate the Cliff Notes version and not the detailed Wikipedia version, and you've obviously done very well, and we only have one question. Chair recognizes Reverend Williams for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Mr. Presenter. Thought you were going to take a bucket of water up there one time. little clarification on 13.3.3, Department of Agriculture on the air conditioning system.
Yes.
I'm not sure, never got any feedback. We had quite a thing 2 or 3 years ago about some safety issues concerning the air and the ventilation. I know you're not prepared this morning, but if you would see the commissioner updates us on what they did about that.
I'll be glad to take a stab at it now. I think what you're referring to were issues we had at the State Poultry Lab up in Gainesville.
Yes.
Those have been corrected. Some of the contractors that were the original contractors, we had an issue with them in the very beginning up there. Some of those have come back and made some adjustments and corrections. There were some funds that we'd put in also to make some of those corrections, and so all of that, to my knowledge at this point, all of those issues have been remedied.
Thank you. On your section 25, retirement COLAs.
On ERS?
Yes.
Yeah, you're.
My question is, or suggestion is, on that COLA, that definitely the House of Representatives be considered, and we want to let you know that, if you can't do a COLA, how about a Pepsi?
Come by my office and I'll give you a COLA.
Chair Lady Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an excellent budget, and a lot of work went into it by all the different committee members. Is that not true?
It is.
And on behalf of all of us, thank you. I'm going to delay the second part of Representative Williams' request for us, but to thank all of you for starting to look into the COLAs for our employment system, retirement system, and I hope at some point we can tag in the public safety as well. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Chairman, I see the chairman of rules standing in the back of the room.
I see him too. And Chairman Jones, you're recognized for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that HB 910 be passed by committee substitute.
There is a motion. There is a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are adjourned.